Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Peter, and I'll be talking to you a bit about my experience with learning and using Vue for the first time, in hopes to encourage some of you who are just starting out as well. So, a little bit about me. I recently attended Full Stack Academy, and I've been programming for about 1 year now. While I was studying there, I mainly worked with React. However, I've heard a lot of good things about Vue, and after my first meetup here last month, I wanted to start learning it. And what better way to learn a new framework than to try to build something with it, right? I was just getting started on a portfolio site for a friend who was doing his master's in architecture. So I scrapped the React project and looked into how to set things up with Vue. Now, I quickly found two options. One, to use Vue CLI, which is basically their version of Create React App, or not using it. I like to know what's going on under the hood of things with the Webpack configs and all that jazz. So I scrapped together my own Vue environment. And long story short, 2 weeks into it, I got really sick of all the errors I was getting. So I scrapped it again and started over. But it's okay because things got better on from there. Vue CLI comes with a fully configured Webpack for both development and production, and even includes some boilerplate code to get you started. Not to mention the linting and hot reloading all set up for you. So that's really nice. So if you are starting out, I would suggest using it. It'll save you a lot of time and stress, and you'll actually learn a lot faster too because you're coding more instead of being on Stack Overflow all day. To understand the basics of how Vue works and how to work with it, I recommend Coding Explained by Bo Anderson. He explains things pretty well, and it's free. I use it to get my feet wet before diving into the code. Starting out with Vue, there were a lot of new things, but mostly my first impressions were positive and negative, but there were some things I had to get accustomed to. Mainly this. At first glance, I mean, even now, it's pretty self-explanatory what's going on here. But remember, I like to understand what's going on under the surface, so it kind of peeved me a little bit. My next question was, since each component came with its own style tag, I wanted to know what would be the best approach or practice to manage the CSS files. I usually like to keep my CSS separate and very modular when working with React. So I pinged for help, and with a little guidance from Justin, I learned that I should think about how I manage the components and styles a little differently. Technically, there's tools like the scoping style tags, which help a lot. So yeah, generally the syntax was very consistent and easy to follow. When I didn't know how to do something and was too lazy to look it up on Stack Overflow, though Vue Overflow would be pretty cool. Yeah, I would try a piece of code and it would actually work sometimes, and I didn't know how. But yeah, it's very intuitive, and if I can do it, I'm sure all of you. I don't know how many of you guys are beginners, but yeah. So now I'm going to talk about something that I really personally enjoyed when working with React, and that's a transition tag. Now, when you're reading a book or a story, and you flip through the pages or you reach the next chapter, you don't immediately forget about everything you read preceding it. A good narrative uses imagery, setting, mood, and among other things to help the audience visualize where they are and where they're going. So I like to think about good UX design as, in good UX design, I like to think of transitions and more specifically for this talk, routing transitions as things that are enhancing the user's experience. Now, this is a graphic from Vue Docs that shows that tries to explain how it works. So basically, there are 3 stages. There's enter, leave, and appear. Appear, not here, but they all follow the same pattern. So I'll show you how it works. Here I use Sass to try to show the consistency and patterns on all the classes. Basically, the enter class is the starting point, and this is where you want the transition to start. You want to put the CSS classes here, and it's removed one frame after the element enters. The enter active class is applied throughout the entire duration. This is where you want to define the duration of the transition, because if you don't, then it'll just not do anything because it's going to be entered and gone in an instant. So this is where you define the timings. And the enter2 class is where you want the ending state to be, and is added at the same time the enter class is removed and removed together with the enter active class. So yeah, one more thing is there's this attribute called mode, and you can put in out or out in. What it means is if you have out in, you'll want the element that is leaving to completely transition out first before the entering element starts its transition. So let's see some examples. This is a very simple example of routing transitions. So when you're clicking a new link and you want to go somewhere else, there's this just very simple sliding transition. And if you look to the code here, there's this out in, and basically what that's doing is waiting for the first page to leave. But if we change that to in out, yeah, it's a little janky because it's coming in before it leaves. So yeah, mostly you want to do out in. And if you see the layout of how the transitions work, you have the transition name, which defines what you want to call the CSS classes, and the element inside is what's entering and leaving. And the CSS that all you need is right here, the leave and enter active classes, which define the CSS that you want throughout the duration. And for enter, you usually only need to use either enter or enter2 to define, because what the default classes are already there in place. And I wanted to show you that it can become more complex on the project that I was working on. So yeah, this is more complicated because it's not using a simple generic transition across the whole entire page. So what you can do is with the scope style tags, you can customize each page to have different transitions for different pages. And you can tinker with the timings and all of that as well. So yeah, this is something that I kind of enjoyed and thought was pretty fun to do in Vue. Yeah. Any questions?
What was your least favorite part about Vue?
Oh, least favorite? The question was what I didn't like about Vue. I honestly really don't like how the attributes in the Vue elements, you have to use quotes, double quotes, single quotes, or mix them up. And sometimes I was using triple quotes with like the backticks, and I just thought that was really hectic. Maybe I was doing something wrong.
What was the testing about?
So there's no testing for this yet. There was not much time. I kind of got last notice to finish everything up for the presentation. So.
What's your biggest piece of advice to beginners?
In regards to learning about Vue?
Yeah, like your biggest tip or your biggest gotcha. What was your biggest pain in the ass?
Use Vue CLI.
Yeah, so you spoke at the beginning about having a lot of trouble getting Webpack up and running with Vue. Were you ever able to overcome that, or did you just use Vue CLI to overcome that?
So I did I did research how to use all the loaders, different things I wanted in, but it was mostly that problem I showed earlier with Uglify. I fixed that at one point, but it came back for some reason. And I don't know if I didn't save correctly or something, but I was just too annoyed at that point to try to figure out what I did wrong.
So you said you learned React in bootcamp, right?
Mm-hmm.
After this experience, would you recommend they switch to Vue?
Honestly, React has a special place in my heart, but I really enjoyed using Vue because it was very easy to learn. But I don't think I have enough experience to say, like, to be too opinionated towards either one.
Thank you.
Yeah.